Hi, this is Dr. Chandler. I'm going to describe a case study project that I was involved with several years ago. And this is a real project, and some fairly common project challenges came up in this project. And some of those had to do with risk management. So it works out well as a case study for us to examine in this course. I'm not going to name the organization, but just to give you some insight into how the organization operated and its values, it's a very large organization. It still exists now. It's a professional association, and it's located in Washington, D.C. And it has members, and all of its activities are there to serve its members. And its members aren't individuals. Its members are other organizations, and it does what a lot of professional associations do that are located in Washington, D.C. in serving its members. Some of what it does is lobbying to the federal government. So the organization had really clear and distinct lines between its divisions at that time. There was no real collaboration or cooperation between these organizational units. Each organizational unit had a different constituency group and that it focused on and serving their needs. And some of the divisions had their own individual revenue streams, and some of them didn't. So they were all the units, and the term that has been traditionally used to describe this is to refer to these as silos. And these organizational units would compete with each other for the organizational resources, and in order to fund the projects that they wanted to engage in. And in doing that, there was a lot of instances where individuals within the organization threw other individuals under the bus. And that's nothing new. That happens in a lot of organizations. So the next thing that was going on within the organization that impacted the environment was that a new CEO had been hired, and Chief Information Officer. And that individual's background didn't mirror or align with the background of the previous CIO, and it also didn't align with a lot of the other senior decision makers within the organization, the kind of background that they had. This individual came from through a very different path. And that was part of the reason why this individual was selected. This individual was selected to help this organization exponentially grow in the area of information technology, because it was thought by several individuals in the organization that the organization was behind the times as far as information technology goes. So that was a bonus that the individual that they hired as the new CIO had this expertise, but on the other side of the coin, this person was seen as an outsider. This person was seen as somebody that didn't understand their culture, didn't understand the values, didn't understand their constituent organizations, and therefore was an outsider. So the focus was on identifying and purchasing and implementing a new association management system. That was what the project that I was working with them on, that's what was the goal of the project. And so how did this project come to be? Well, the existing system was really old. It was using some really old technology, but it was reliable and it was trustworthy. But it was slow. It didn't work with mobile apps. It didn't work with the internet. There were I'm not making this up. There were messages on the screen that told the users to sit on their hands and don't press any keys and be patient, because some of the functions took so long to complete. So reports would take a long time. There was no capacity to do any end user ad hoc reporting out of it. Senior executives that wanted information out of the system had to work with an analyst to define what they wanted and then wait several days for that information. So this was why this system was seen as something that needed to be replaced. So now let's take a look at what the project management environment, what were the project management processes that were in place in this organization at that time. There were none. There were no standard project management procedures. There were no project management standards. There was no project management training. None of the individuals who were serving as project managers in the organization, who were employees of the organization, none of them had been certified as project managers. When the new CIO was brought on board, they began monthly project review meetings, and in those meetings, the project managers were rewarded for coming to that meeting and with problems and allowing the senior executives in the meeting to solve the problems for them. That was the kind of culture that they had. There was no incentive for the project managers to be avoiding problems, and at all. Instead of avoiding them, there was actually incentives for the project managers to go ahead and incur problems and risks, and not try to solve them, not try to avoid them, not try to mitigate them, but like I said, bring those problems to the senior executives and allow them to solve them. That was the culture that this organization had. So the executive decision makers were relying heavily on the advice from vendors at the time, they were identifying all the vendors that had software that was similar to what they were looking for, and they were bringing them all in. And of course, the vendors were thrilled to be explaining what they could do for this organization with their software. And keep in mind that the people that were in the room with the vendors, it never was any of the end users, nor was it the project managers, nor was it the business analysts or any of those folks. The only people that were in the room that were watching the demonstrations were senior decision makers who were capable, who were the ones who would have to make the decision to write the check to buy the software, but they weren't the individuals who knew anything about their current software. And if they were going to look for a new system that could accomplish everything their existing system did, they didn't have any of that knowledge in the room when they were viewing these demos. So that gives you an overview of the environment that existed for this project when the project was just getting initiated. And so what you can do now is think about what are some of the warning flags you're seeing. What are some of the environmental factors that play into the risks for this project? And if this organization, in initiating a project to replace their existing association management system, how might you identify some of the risks that that might impact this particular project? What might those risks be?